Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our coverage of the third and final season of Squid Game here on We Know Scripted TV and Nothing But Netflix. My name is Mike Bloom, ready to talk all about the incredibly tragic aftermath of an incredibly tragic series of events that happened in hide and seek. A lot was out in the open, and we get a big old introduction to game 5 as well, jump rope. And I'm joined by someone who I would always go double dutching with. It's the one, the only Chappell.
Hey, Mike. This was so sad. This was so sad. Probably the saddest I've been watching Squid Game for about 5 minutes. And then I saw the next challenge and I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. We kind of talked about it yesterday, but I think we're back to the Squid Game that I come to know and love. Like it was always for me about these awful people or these people in awful situations at the very least, kind of in these childhood games, these games that we grew up with, but like in the murder version of them. And so although we had like this really tragic ending to one of our main characters and probably like a fan favorite character, I have to guess, we also got the coolest game that I've seen so far. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, again, this is something that is a little tough to compartmentalize, even though, again, this is far from our first foray into the games proper. And I guess we're a little more calcified to this, again, from the prospect we come in with, which is this reality TV perspective that, like, you can lose your favorites. Absolutely. They can go out in devastating fashion. But in many cases, the game continues. And so
Mhm.
we got to see that happen. I mean, I think certainly the legacy and impact of Gumja is going to be felt certainly on Gi-hun and him finally seemingly getting his groove back and maybe at least having something to fight for now. But yeah, before we know it, we are quite literally jumping into what happens next. And now we have some observers, Chappelle, as I will say, I really enjoyed this episode overall, but I think this episode also firmly reminded me that there's something on Squid Game that I like even less than the Captain Park storyline, and that is the VIPs. I give so much credit to, of course, Hwang Do-hyuk and everything that he's been able to produce with this incredible series. But I always found the Achilles heel in season 1 as well was just like kind of bringing in, these American and British oligarchs essentially to commentate on the games. And again, it is of no offense to him. English is obviously not his first language. I always felt the dialogue was always kind of delivered a little oddly. And again, this is a very minor nitpick, but that appears to be the case here as well. Though maybe it's purposely done to show how these people are almost inhuman with how much they are playing with the lives of these poor people.
I really would love to judge those VIPs, but are we not them? We're watching the same exact story that they're watching, except
I
we
don't
have
know.
more.
Would you? We're not suiting up in the pink jumpsuits and
We're not.
killing off all the red people.
We're not. Comma but as reality TV fans, if they said, okay, take a vote, then we're definitely getting our Love Island apps out. You know what I'm saying? We're
Yep.
calling the American Idol hotline. We're doing this. We have been spectators of a lot of television, whether it be traumatic or not. And I can probably point to a bunch of traumatic shows that seemingly on the surface are not so bad, but then afterwards you find out all the things and the awful reactions people have to being on the show. The tragedy of fame sometimes, it's like all the bullying and like the spotlight and all that kind of stuff. And we've been watching reality TV for a long time, so we've seen all of the stories told. And so for us to still keep tuning in, I don't know, we're better than the VIPs, but I can definitely see some parallels between them and us, because just as the VIPs are tuned in, we're not missing a beat of the Squid Game. I definitely was very riveted by this episode, by this most recent game. And although I hate seeing these people talk about it and even participate in the Squid Game, I do think that it's an interesting layer that kind of brings in a little meta commentary about like, okay, this is gruesome, but why are you watching it?
Yeah, exactly. You cannot look away, especially when money is on the line. So let's get to, I think, one of the biggest game changers in this season and in this series. We have a whole ass baby now that we are dealing with. And Chappelle, this was the biggest question that you and I had going into
Mhm.
this episode is like, okay, do they immediately take the baby? Is the baby going to become a player? And I would have put money on the fact that the former would have happened much more than the latter would have. But somehow, not only has this baby not been sort of confiscated by production at all. Neither is this baby really being accommodated, though, just sort of being left at the bunk to fend for itself, despite the fact that it is less than 1 day old. It is now, I guess, officially a player, not being given, I don't know if they can fashion up some sort of jumpsuit for it, but I mean, I guess, a rather fitting phrase that one of the soldiers said is that everyone here is a player. We can obviously get into that with Noel as well, even with the VIPs and Inho, as to like everyone sort of being a piece in someone else's game at the end of the day. But yeah, I guess the answer to how do they deal with this incredibly unorthodox situation is keep doing what you're doing. Well, I guess we have, 25 and a half players now, 24 and a half now with the tragic passing of Gumja?
Yeah, and I don't know, because I feel like this is just like, this is crazy. Okay, I'm trying to compartmentalize everything that happened, because the entire episode I'm thinking, okay, obviously they're going to come in and take the baby. They're going to come take the baby. Oh, they're not going to take the baby. Okay, fine. But she's going to be able to like sit the baby down while she goes and does her next task. Like, the baby is not going to be included. But then it looks like the VIPs are like, kind of like, wouldn't it be interesting if we just kept the baby? And they're like, okay, fine, whatever. What, no skin off my back.
Now I kind of wish that, if you remember, Chappell, back in the day, these early seasons of the challenge, before it was America's Fifth Sport, did have a contestant, Baloo.
There was a baby.
Come in with her baby. Like, if Inho was a part of Boonham Murray back in the day, he would have made that baby a full-on challenger.
Which is crazy, right? Like, I've never forgotten that baby in basically a frat house during the challenge early stages. This is way worse, obviously, but it's still crazy to me that they looked at the idea and said, although the humane thing would be to probably get the baby some care, get the baby out of here, do something, or at least help this woman with the baby, maybe let her sit out something because she has a bad leg and a baby. No, they said make her do it with the baby and the bad ankle, and let's see what happens. And let's also bet on it. Let's see, like, I don't know if the odds are double or nothing or whatever if you bet on the woman with the baby, but one of the VIPs was like, F it, I already voted on the woman, she has a baby, I guess it's all par for the course. This is insane, but we needed to know kind of what was going to make Gi-hun like pop out of his catatonic state. Last episode we really talked about, okay, so these things happen, but what's going to make him want to have any type of fighting spirit? Well, it's the baby, the baby and the sacrifice of Gumja, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe less so about Gumja's sacrifice and more so the words that she imparted onto him for the last time. And we'll certainly get into sort of her last stand. But it's this idea of, we are all here for various reasons. And Chappell, I think you put this so well earlier when you said that Squid Game is sometimes watching awful people and sometimes it's watching like awful things happen to good people. But regardless, everyone has entered the game. Everyone agreed, no matter what they thought they were doing when they called up the number on that card, they all had a part of them that wanted to play in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, without necessarily knowing the life or death circumstances. And Gi-hun, as we talked about over the first 2 episodes, is perhaps reconciling with this idea of like, okay, I came in here because I wanted to prove the front man wrong, that people can be good. Maybe they're not. And maybe I'm not. But we talked about this last episode, and Gumja says the exact same thing, right? The tabula rasa, this idea of, listen, we all made a choice, various choices, in fact, to put us in this place. This baby did not. This baby is quite literally in the wrong time, in the wrong place. This baby does not deserve this. And so, as we also mentioned last time, the vote is pretty much foregone. It seems like the ratio pretty much works itself out, where we only really get one swapping of sides, which we'll get into with the loss of Namu. But that sort of ship has sailed at this point, and Captain Park is driving it. So the only way out is to win. And so I think that Gi-hun has this new sort of reinvigorated spirit of, okay, maybe my initial goal of showcasing the good in humanity was sullied by all of the greed and nefarious activity that existed around me, both from a contestant and production perspective. But this is new life. This is what I've been trying to say all along. And if I can get this kid out of here, then maybe it was worth it, perhaps even at the cost of my own life.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to be the change I want to see. It's like, I'm going to do a selfless thing and help this baby by all, whatever it takes, right? But to me, it's still, you're still in the Squid Game. So by whatever it takes, you also mean at the expense of all these other people's lives. It's like there's no way, but there's no way out, right? At this point, there's literally no way out. We've seen the vote. He basically abstains because even if he voted, they would still be down in the numbers every time. So the best thing he can try to do is live his life for this child and the child's mother. And we know that's going to be difficult considering the child's mother obviously is already only has one leg to stand on, literally. But then, of course, Gi-hun is in a position where he had a goal, but I guess as he reflects on his time as a parent and, being able to see this baby in this young life, okay, he's like, okay, this is probably the greater good that will absolve me from whatever guilt I feel toward being a part of this, for participating, for even being in a situation where I had to be in the Squid Game in the first place. Like, I feel like you put all his eggs in this one basket, right? And say like, okay, everything is on the baby. And if it's not for the baby, then what else am I doing it for?
Yeah, I think that it's most represented in Ki-hun's conversation with Junhi, where, remember, in the previous episode, Daeho essentially pulls the reverse Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting by saying, it's all your fault. And, Ki-hun will recite that after he ends up strangling Daeho to death. But when he finds Junhi doing her own share of, guilt shaming, right? By being like, if it wasn't for my baby, Hyunju 120 wouldn't be dead. Gumja would not have had to kill her own son. Clearly, she's feeling a lot of the weight from all of these recent deaths falls squarely on her, because in theory, a lot of it was to protect her. But Gi-hun, I think when we talk about the projection he's able to do in season 3, it happens again here by saying, it's not your fault, the title of the episode. We made a choice. And again, if we're talking about the legacy of Gumja, maybe it is that one nugget that he's able to carry forward. I mean, she does divulge to him the fact that she killed her own son, or at least, again, made a move that led to his death, led to his execution, which does, from a performance perspective, seem to wake him up, right? He's just staring middle distance like he usually is the entire time until she mentions that. And then he actually does look at her. And so I do wonder how much that bit of information might have him realize this idea again of like, we are all cogs in this machine. We are only doing these things because the people above are the ones that are kind of giving us the orders to do so.
Yeah, I mean, because he didn't witness any of that happen, right? So
right.
In his mind, he's like,
he was up on his own side quest,
right? So in his mind, she's like, oh, her son didn't make it. But to find out that this woman actually, like, killed, in her words, killed her son, right? He doesn't know the circumstances. He doesn't know that in reality she was just saving the baby and he ran out of time and he got murdered. Like, she did stab him, but that ain't what killed him. You know what I'm saying? The clock running out in that AR is what killed him, right? So when he hears this, he's thinking, oh my God, look at the situation we're in, to where this woman has turned on the fruit of her looms, if you will. She like, look, this is my child, and I murdered this kid to stay in the Squid Game, or at least to protect this baby. If this woman was willing to do that for this woman, like as the VIPs will say, this lady just met this woman, and she really just met this baby. What? She'd known the baby for like 12 hours? Come on, stop it. And so, but she did all of that to protect them at the cost of her own son, who she had already swore to God that she would do anything to protect, at the expense of like absolving her from the guilt of, pushing him to attempt suicide. And so, yeah, there was so much going on to where I think the light bulb just went off in his head. Like, oh my God. Like, this is deeper than I thought it was. It's like when you're turning these families against each other like this, yeah, I don't know if you can really like quantify, the idea of what we have going on here. So he's like, yeah, I'll lock in on the baby because nothing else makes sense, really.
Yeah, so let's get into the tragic loss of 149, which was incredibly shocking in the moment. Of course, a gruesome image. I would say even more so than some of the abject violence that falls down on some of these contestants in the games, that, the lights turn on and we see that she has hung herself overnight. And it's because she feels like she's in a situation where we, think that Gi-hun is thinking one way out. She's thinking no way out. After all of this, I think for the vast majority of people, as we talked about before, they have this mentality of like, look what I had to do. It has to be worth it. We have to keep going. But she has a completely different set of circumstances. She says, I had to do some incredibly hurtful things for this woman and her child. We need to get her out right now. She is falling on her knees, begging and pleading during the voting proceedings for this to not go through. It falls on deaf ears. People just walk right by her, bystander effect,
Mm.
and slap that O like they mean it. And then when she tries to make this final plea to Gi-hun, feeling like, hey, I still believe you were sent here to save us all. And as you get into telling this absolutely riveting yet heartbreaking backstory where she knew that, her son was not necessarily raised with the most sharp set of teeth, unlike that attack dog, as we'll get into with Woosak over the years. And she tried the rod. It didn't necessarily work. In fact, it very much pushed him in the other direction. And, as she sort of talks through the horrors that she is reconciling with, the idea of like, I have lived my life trying to protect this boy in more ways than one. And at the end of the day, I was the one, from her perspective, most responsible for his death. Like, I think it's something that, again, when we talk about the compartmentalizing, it was obviously a lot to sit with in the moment, but there was a lot of death we were reflecting on over the course of that episode. And I mean, the more you think about it, the more I have to figure, Chappell, this might be at this moment, because who the hell knows what's coming down the pipe with the last 3 episodes. But that storyline has to be the darkest thing in the history of Squid Game, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's almost like the episode is trying to get us to place the blame on someone, right? To say like, this is the thing that you did to get you here. In reality, there's no right answer to that. Like, she's saying like, I didn't raise him to be strong enough, so then I told him he wasn't strong enough, and though he attempted to take his life, and then I promised that I would protect him, and then I came into the Squid Game to protect him, and then he died, but he died because I was protecting him from a child. I'm protecting the child from him, but he shouldn't have even been in the Squid Game in the first place. Like, it's like she's trying to rationalize how we got here and how she can put the blame on herself. And in reality, I don't think you can just put the blame on one person. I think that these things happen because life is hard. She talks about how good people are the ones who get the worst out of life, and then they put the blame on themselves. And is that not what she's doing right now? She's talking about all the good things that she did. She joined the Squid Game to protect her son, and now she's blaming herself for her son dying. Man, your son was going to die in the Squid Game with or without you. He's not good at this kind of stuff. You know it. He knows it. That's why he was walking around shivering. The reason why he doesn't kill this baby is because you stopped him. But make no mistake, if there was no baby, he wouldn't have survived this round anyway. That woman would have killed him with one leg, on one foot. She would have murdered your son. But it's like, to her, she's trying to figure out like, okay, how can I have stopped this? Where could I have bobbed when I weaved or something like that? In reality, I don't think there's any right answer for there. And I think that, they're looking up at the VIPs and saying, these people are ruining the world, tearing it apart. And they get to just take no blame at all. And here you are in the thick of it, making the biggest sacrifices that anybody can make, losing their child, losing their own lives, losing the children of other people. And you're blaming you, as these people have you forced into this situation. It's crazy.
And I think that's another thing that wakes Gi-hun up as well, right? Because I imagine his headspace at this moment is he's thinking, I am no worse than the very people that I am decrying. Like maybe his mind's flashing back to when Inho was sitting there being like, aha, so you are sacrificing X's for the greater good. And that happened even more so than Gi-hun initially reckoned when he staged his coup. But when she says, as you mentioned, no matter how you look at it, life is just unfair. Bad people do bad things, but they blame others and go on to live in peace. Good people, on the other hand, beat themselves up about the smallest things. I mean, I think, again, Squid Game is a show that does not necessarily personify everyone as capital B bad or capital G good. I mean, I would say more so it's personifying bad people over good people in general, but that people are capable of doing bad things in hopefully good pursuits. I think maybe that was also a bit of a reminder to him of like, the fact that I am sort of living in so much regret and remorse for what I feel is all this blood on my hands, as the late shaman says, all the voices that are screaming in my ear, maybe that actually does showcase that I am a better person than I think I am in this moment. Because if I truly was as deplorable of a human being as Inho and as the late chairman make us all out to be, would I be sitting here in my feels? Would I be rendered catatonic for the entire season up to this point?
And would I be playing by the rules of the game? We see Gi-hun being primarily one of the people who is like following the rules, he's not sabotaging anybody. He's not trying
he's
to,
not pushing P. He's not trying to cut the ladder after he climbs it, essentially.
Exactly. Whereas you see so many other people are willing to do just that. They're throwing their number one allies under the bus and locking them into rooms while they get stabbed up so they can steal their keys. We see all that kind of stuff from other players, but there are players that just don't do that because they're here to win the game by saving their own lives, not by pushing everybody else down and making them plummet to their deaths, as we will see in the jump rope game. But we've seen in other games too. The bridge game in season 1 was a good example of that, where people were like, okay, if I just make you all fall, then I will win. And that is a way to win the game. But I think that it is a mark on, probably a little bit of your morality if you can sit there and say, okay, all that stuff is out of my control, right? These games and stuff like that is out of my control. What I can control are my actions, and I won't be the reason why other people die by my hands. If anything, it'll be the games.
Well, let's get into the game. We finally get to see who Sarah Beth's friend is, and it turns out that he is at the other side of this menacing jump rope. So yeah, this is sort of like a take on the bridge of it all, right? Complete with, we get the VIP reveal, they get the little mini replica with the pieces representing the players, like down to the similar notes there. But essentially, they are turning this jump rope, this giant bar, in a rhythmic fashion. You just gotta jump across it and make your way over to the other side. So before we get into some of the specifics that we see, and we will assumingly see more of in the next episode, thoughts about this as a game, especially following up how epic and excruciating hide and seek was.
I like this game.
You like this game?
I like this game. In my mind, I'm like, okay, of all the games, this is probably the one I could probably do, because it's like, if you can just have that internal clock. And if you're if you were like me, someone who is very intent on surviving, then that's not. I'm never going to forget how often I need to jump. If anything, I might jump when I don't need to jump, but I'm not going to ever get hit by that rope. So I felt like that was cool. I think adding the baby was like an added, necessary kind of twist, because otherwise, I think this is pretty straightforward for the most part. Now, once Gi-hun gets across and realizes that the other players are being a little bit more self-interested.
I mean, you say other players, it's mainly one. It's this douche 96 is now apparently the new antagonist of the show.
And that's okay. You know what? Like, we needed a bad guy. We needed another one, another tangible bad guy, because we've been letting some of these people slip through the cracks. We lost our shaman last episode. So I felt like we needed to invigorate the show a little bit more. And this guy being like, yeah, I'm just going to push these people off. That's crazy. It also makes sense, because these are the people we're dealing with, right? They were willing to murder people in the night so they could win the vote. So this makes total sense. I'm sure he was one of the people who was also running around shooting some of the blues last round when they were doing hide and seek, just to make sure, stabbing them, just to make sure that they didn't come back to play some more. So I loved all of that just from a TV perspective. But now I want to know, how does Gi-hun deal with this? Does he now kill this guy to keep him from killing everybody else? Does he let him kill a few more before he stops him? How long do we keep this going? Because Gi-hun still has to get back across the bridge to help Junhi. At least he says he is going to. Now, why Junhi's baby daddy ain't helping, I don't know.
Well, so that's the thing. Allow me to make it another bold prediction as to what's going to happen next. Because, yeah, we see a lot of, glances exchange between MG Coin and Junhi and Gi-hun, with Gi-hun kind of stepping forward, having this newly reinvigorated spirit to be like, I'll protect you and the baby in this moment. MG Coin's like, what the hell, man? That's my job. So,
he's the dad that stepped up. He's not the stepdad, okay? Gi-hun's he's doing what needs to be done.
And I'm a little nervous, because MG Coin is a bit of a loose cannon, especially considering that we got rid of the loosest of cannons in the form of Namu, and then maybe Minsu is stepping up in his stead. So if I'm trying to shaman see all the paths in front of me, what I could see happen next time is that I don't think Gi-hun's going to make it back, which is also an incredibly ridiculous thing, but it does speak to how delightfully foolhardy this man is, that he's like, all right, I defied death once. Surely I could do it 3 times, because he has to go all the way back.
And come on back again.
Now, I guess the good news is that, we see him stumble a few times. At least he has his arms free if he were to go back with Junhi. But I think what's going to happen is MG Coin is going to, take Junhi piggyback style. I think it's going to see that he can't make it back, so MG Coin will be like, don't worry, I'm going to protect you. We see that he has a couple of really guilty looks towards Junhi. They
Mhm.
have not talked at all, seemingly, since he ended up killing 120, which was obviously such a big deal. So I think he's going to try to overextend himself and be like, okay, listen, I'll be the one to protect you in this moment. He can't do it. He's got the baby. Let me be the one to do it. And I think maybe either it culminates in like him sacrificing himself. I could see something where he's like maybe even going to try to hold the bar to have her go, or maybe
Ooh.
he like carries her on his back and they both end up tumbling down, which would be also incredibly tragic that this kid is orphaned within like a day of their life. But I think MG Coin has to factor in some way here.
Well, I would have thought he would have went over and visited the baby at least once in the night. Dear God, like we see Gumja
Yeah, I
over
kind of
there.
odd that he's an absentee father when he's like 10 feet
You
away.
right there. I can see you, sir. Come over here and check on this baby. Rock the baby or something. Hold the baby so this woman don't have to hold. I was like, what are you doing? And so the whole time I was thinking, what this girl's baby daddy is right over there just being ain't shit. But you know, as you can tell, he is like looking, and I don't know if he's just jealous of Gi-hun, just like, why are you with my child? You know, like that's my baby mama. Like I don't understand like what his real motivation is, because if he really cared, I feel like you wouldn't be waiting until the rope to go over there and try to bond with this woman and this child. But yeah, I do think he's going to do something, but I just think it would be such a difficult task. Even just the idea that there's a world where Junhi makes it across this bridge with the jump rope, like her ankle is like the size of a tennis ball, and she's not going to be able to jump. Like that's not happening. So you're right. Somebody's going to have to carry her on their backs or whatever in order to make it across. And then there's that gap as well. I don't know. I have no clue who's going to physically be able to do this. And even if I would believe that you could physically be able to do this, like, you know what I'm saying? Like if, let's say she does make it across, Gi-hun or her baby daddy, MG Coin, gets her on the back or whatever. I'm like, this level of physicality is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like the balance, the timing, the strength, all those things. And then you make it all the way across. Just give them the money. I think at that point, they've dedicated enough to this. They've given enough. Take the baby out of the game, give them some money, and send them on their way.
See, here's the thing, though. If I were 96, and if I were, for some reason, trying to pick and choose the people that I take out, like, is there a world where Junhi's kind of a goat at this point? Because, like, let's say, I mean, and he doesn't know how the game ends. Gi-hun does. Assuming that it is with the titular Squid Game, which is a game of, like, running around and defending yourself, Junhi's a little handicapped in more ways than one. Yes, if you get rid of somebody, that is always nice because that's, 1 billion more into the big piggy bank. But like, if I had a choice between getting rid of someone who could be a credible threat to me winning and the woman who has both her arms around a baby at all times and walking on one incredibly broken ankle, give me the latter every day of the week.
Yeah, we're dragging her to the end because she can't. I mean, what can she beat you in? And I think the VIPs are even noticing that too. They're like, we didn't bet on her on purpose. You know, one of the VIPs definitely did because he was drunk. But if she makes it through this round, like, I'm not gonna bet on her to win the whole thing. But who's taking her out? You know, like I'm trying to keep her with me as long as I can. And then I don't know if you get bonus bucks for the baby. You know, like because the baby is now in the game. So are you going to increase the pot as well? Like I really have questions because they're treating her like she's like Sonic with Tails. You know, when in reality, I'm like, no, Tails is a playable character in this game now. You know, there should be money attached to the baby too. Not to say that they should go after the baby, but by the end of this, I would be talking about increasing the pot.
I mean, that's going to be a really interesting twist if it's like whether Junhi is there at the end or not. It's like Gi-hun and the baby and somebody else, and Gi-hun kills somebody and then decides he's going to take his own life. So the baby gets the 45.6 billion won. That would be incredible.
Michael, please. Okay, a little bit. I kind of like that. I don't love it. I don't love it. You know, I want to hear about nobody taking their life, but for the story. See, that's what I'm saying. How are we better than the VIPs? How? They up there having their like super like posh British ass podcast after every little like, oh, how did you like that? I can't believe she's still in the game. I was like, wait a minute. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to do.
Or like fantasy football podcasters, right? Being like, all right, well, practice reports show that Junhi did sustain an ankle injury. She is doubtful to play. So if you're playing half PPR, try to bench her. But the baby, the baby's in now. Pick that up as a handcuff.
Right. Meanwhile, we're all like updating our things, checking our parlays. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Actually, the Junhi baby 2-leg parlay, even though she's on one leg, actually, is a new venture here.
I'm about to say, yeah, she lost one leg and gained two in one episode. So there you go.
So let's talk about the one life that was expended in this episode from a named character. Let's talk about the unceremonious end of Namgyu here.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Gumja.
Well, yeah, Gumja we could certainly get into here, too.
I think we talked about her.
Let's focus on Gumja first, before we get back to the jump rope of it all, because we talked about it briefly, but, like, obviously not, this is not the first time that we have seen someone hang themselves within the dormitory, but it was still just such a brutal way to lose this character who I think, despite the fact that she didn't win the game, she really got like the personal growth arc, Chappell. We've seen a lot of these, especially new era Survivor, where, again, think about the way that she enters, where she is this like very feisty, opinionated older woman who's pretty transphobic, who like basically dotes on yet constantly insults her son. And then, like, essentially once she finds out that Junhi is pregnant, we really see her demeanor change. And we see how that carries forward to her final moments in the series proper.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense narratively for her to go here because, well, that's one more person we would need to get across this bridge with the jump rope, and I just don't see it happening for her. But also, what else is she fighting for? She only came into Squid Game to fight for her son, and then from her point of view, she sacrificed her son for someone that she barely even knew. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm not even serving my actual purpose in being in the game doing that. And then she's begging to leave. Like, she wants out so bad. And then, as you said, they're basically just stepping over her to go and be like, nah, lady, you're in the game. You're in the game. So it's like she's being tortured by minute with the grief of losing her son, the weight of, having to protect this woman and her child, and then the idea that she's a burden to the rest of their, to herself, actually trying to win the game. But like she has no one else to turn to. The one ally she has is holding a baby. The other one that she thought she has is not even talking to her. Gi-hun's like a ghost. They have him like handcuffed up just so he doesn't do anything crazy. But he's not even voting at this point. You can't even count his vote. So she's like, just take me out. I'm done. I have nothing else to go for. Like you said, she got the growth arc. She spent her whole life dedicated to protecting her son, and she did it until she couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of these things where, again, it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm putting my life on the line. It really is the much more depressing route of like, I have nowhere else to go at this point. I have lost everything. And while I could dedicate myself to Junhi and her cause, like, I've tried to externalize that and it's not working. And that was even more heartbreaking, I think, for me, was like watching Junhi sob upon seeing her, because as Junhi will talk about later, right, she admits that the first time we saw her when she got the card was at an abortion clinic, and she says the reason why she didn't go through with it is because she thought she would be alone. And like, it's really, really depressing to say, but like, this baby is her family, would be kind of this forced companionship. It's it's like when Michael Scott got interviewed on Fundle Bundle and he said that he would want to have a 10 kids so he would have 10 friends. Like, she feels this absolute isolation, which makes sense considering that, her freaking boy toy pumped and dumped the crypto scam and then left her high and dry with the baby. And so she was just seeking this sense of somebody, this warm body that is guaranteed to be beside her because nobody else is. And you would think that she found these people in Hyunju and in Gumja, and for one reason or another, they are both gone. And from her perspective, it's because of her. And so Gumja's death is, again, so incredibly dark and sad. But then the more I think about Junhi's headspace at this time, that feels even darker to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's helpless. And she's got, like, we keep pointing out, but she's got an injury. She's helpless. But she can't quit because she still has something to live for. It's the baby. Gumja was like, my child is gone. Like, I don't have anything else. So she decided to take her own life and get out of the way, basically. Like, I'm not going to be a burden, like, because in a weird way, I mean, we lost our soldier because she was protecting her as well. She was protecting her and the baby. So she's now taking herself out of the mix. But Junhi can't do that. She's not allowed to. She has a baby. So she's like, I'm here with the baby until until I'm not, and she's gonna try her best. I think one of the VIPs said that God created mothers so that because he can be everywhere at once, and
Which
so it's
feels like someone's going to clip that caption out and apply to all the reality TV contestants that have been assigned that label. And
I might have a Genevieve tweet drafted already for season 50.
Pronounced
Actually,
Geneva, Chappell.
yeah, but I might have saved that for sure. But yeah, I think that's a good point though. Like she's like, this is now my job. This is now my win condition. I have to keep this baby alive. If something happens to the baby, I don't know how long we have Junhi around, but Junhi's baby daddy is right there. You know, like that's the craziest part about this. This woman has never felt lonelier, and her baby daddy is right there. Like he's watching her.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if she recognizes him. Again, I think we have to do a lot of filling in the blank right now because we have not gotten a conversation between them. But like, considering the way that she looked at him after he just saunters into the room, stabs one of her closest friends and protectors in the back, and just goes on with his merry way, I don't know if she recognizes the man that he is anymore. So it also might be a thing where it's less so like, oh, he hasn't approached her, how dare he? And more so like, she's saying, stay the F away.
Stay away from me. Yeah.
You are not the person that I was, connected with once upon a time.
Yeah. Well, he's always sucked. It seems like since that connection, since she got pregnant, he hasn't been there for her at all. And now to know that he's also the face of the death of one of her closest allies in the game, yeah, she probably doesn't want to be surrounded by him. And so there's just so many layers to Junhi and her strife right now. That's tough. She's a really tough spot.
Yes, and so R.I.P. Gumja. I think that she deserves the reverence for both the actress and the character. Less so for the first life that is snuffed out in the jump rope game, but still, notable. Namgyu is no more. And, I think we had some sort of feeling that inevitably an ending was coming for him, and it would involve the drugs, and it would involve Minsu somehow.
Minsu!
But I did not necessarily think for many reasons it would fall in the way that it did, where again, Minsu did not necessarily kill him, but he did essentially drive him to the point of no return by being like, fetch doggy, you want your drugs so much, go out and risk your life to get them.
And then he took the drugs away from him at the same time. He kept the drugs and had him chasing after the cross, which is probably some other parable that we could connect that to. But yeah, I love Minsu so much. I do. I love this evil turn he's taking. He's like doing drugs now and hanging out with the wrong crowd. Like I love him so much.
See, this is why Gumja couldn't have gone. She needs to dote on Minsu. He needs to be the Yu Young-sik to be like, Minsu, what are you doing? You're falling in with the wrong crowd.
Exactly. And so, look, he needed to get his revenge. It finally happened, and we needed a scapegoat. We needed somebody to get out there and start jump roping because Mike, they only have 20 minutes to get across this thing.
And this is not like the glass bridge where the order is predetermined. It was just like, yeah, go whenever you're ready.
And they said, figure it out. But in 20 minutes, if you don't make it across, you will be eliminated, and the baby too. And so they needed somebody to get out there. And my God, Minsu, with his merger strategy, he just like, he's sitting Namgyu out there. Nobody's sad to lose Namgyu. I'm definitely not. If anything, I was kind of enjoying seeing him suffer prior to going out on the bridge where he was realizing that his drugs were gone. It was getting hard. He ended up apologizing because he had nothing else to do to live for at that point. He's like, I just need my drugs. But I'm concerned now about
which is why it's wild. He voted X. Like,
he's ready to go. I too hate being sober in public places. Okay, like it's time for me to tap out, y'all. The alcohol is wearing off. So yeah, this was tough exit for him. But I'm more concerned about Minsu because Minsu still has that last drug with him. I still haven't identified what is he taking.
I feel like it's some form of ecstasy.
Gotta be right.
Because I'm also trying to think about the symptoms that Namgyu was going through, and it felt like a sort of withdrawal. He was chugging a lot of water, so it probably makes the most sense. And it does make sense that rapper Thanos would have like the ultimate party drug with him at all times.
Exactly. And now Minsu has one, so I don't know if Minsu was like, do I take one? I need a little courage, a little ecstasy courage real quick to get across this bridge. Does he save it? Because we saw his reaction to taking it last time, and it wasn't great. Things did not go great. I do not trust him crossing this bridge and jump roping on the drugs. So I'm more concerned about him. But Namgyu was like our last cartoony villain. We don't have any more. I mean, we got that one billionaire who's kind of hanging around. He's not as cartoony, but like the shaman, Thanos, Namgyu, those were our, mustache twirly evil people, and they're all gone now.
Well, let's get into some of our stuff on and off the island outside of the games. Let's go off island in multiple ways, as I guess we're going on island in a certain way with Junho here. So Junho is soldiering forward despite Captain Park consistently being like, do we want to go that way? We probably shouldn't. Junho's like, nah, F you. And indeed, Chappell, if his seems like he was tripping for a hot second considering all the stuff that he was visualizing, but maybe that's just his like Batman brain that he has going on. He is able to remember that this is maybe not the island, because if you remember in season 1, Junho makes his way down to the basement, grabs some scuba gear, and actually does travel to another island, and that's where he's found out by Inho and gets shot off the cliff. But he knows that they're close. So what do you think, Chappell, given all of Captain Park's Willy Wonka-esque stop, don't go in there, protestations, do you think they're going to find the island as soon as next episode?
He might find the island, but he won't be there with Captain Park. Captain Park's he's not going to ever help him. He's just not. And Junho is the worst detective. I mean, this guy, Woosak is calling him, being like, hey, I Googled this guy. I asked around, and nobody knows who this Captain Park is. You would think because he's been doing it for so long, as he says, that people would know him. And Junho was like, well, that doesn't mean he killed the drone guy. He's like, yeah, but don't you think you shouldn't be on the boat with him?
Right.
Like, don't you?
Does that make him a bit of a person of interest?
Right. You don't think that a red flag at the very least? And he just keeps getting in the way every time you try to investigate anything. Like, no, don't go in there. Stop. So he's going to find the island. It's clear. But he's got to do something about Captain Park. And I thought in this episode we had Captain Park where we wanted him. And then Wosak just goes and gets arrested. And now I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because I guess he would be arrested for breaking and entering, but like at the same time, could Woosak be like, hey, look, there's a giant pit of money over here. Does anyone want to investigate the giant pit of money? Though we also found out from season 1 that like the police force is not necessarily creative in their thinking as well as to like, oh, pink mask, he might just really be a fun, festive Halloween party, or Halloween was only a few days ago at the time this is happening. Let's talk about Woosak going full wet bandit here, because Chappell, I am obsessed with the idea that Captain Park has decorated his home with pictures of taking essentially all the upper management from Squid Game on these fishing trips. That is absolutely incredible. Talk about a huge brown noser within the corporate ladder.
It's like when you go to those little restaurants in small towns where like the like random celebrities have popped in, and on the wall they have like picture of me and Arnold Schwarzenegger, picture of me and George Bush's nephew. That's kind of how it felt, because Wosak is looking at the wall and he's like, wait, is that the recruiter? Why are you taking a picture with the recruiter? Why of all the people, the recruiter even gets a photo?
But why is he hanging it up? Why is he like, good times, great times with my bosses?
Right. I don't know if they all they all joined the Squid Game family together. They were in the same orientation class or something like that. These are my buds.
Because as we find out, like I think the squares are the managers. Like I think he was a higher up in there, but clearly like he's been a part of the behind the scenes stuff. It seems like he was that first before he was a man of the sea, a shaman of the sea, if you will. And so it's just incredible thinking, though, because, again, we don't know too much about the behind-the-scenes stuff, and obviously we'll get into with Noel how there might be some strange relationships between the various factions of, the corporate side of things. So I just love that, like, honestly, it kind of makes Captain Park look a little more wholesome to me. That, like,
a little bit.
This guy, like, he's legitimately wanting to look out for his friend, Inho, by trying to lead Junho astray as much as he can.
This is his job, but these are also his friends, his colleagues. It's like, Mike, I'm gonna have a picture of me and you. We're gonna screenshot this, and I'm gonna just put it right here on the wall. So I'm like, no, this is my coworker, Mike Bloom. He's a great guy. I think that's kind of the approach we have to look at, is that some people are looking at this like it's just a job. Even when we see Noel take the job, we were like, is this just like summer employment? Because the Squid Game doesn't last that long, but you just need a little extra money. these are the people he works with. He's probably closest with these people. He sees them all the time. They probably take his ferry back and forth sometime. Who knows? And so, yeah, he says for him, he's not in the inner workings of the Squid Game. He's not out there murdering people. For him, this is just another day at work with my colleagues and my friends. This is probably like a little team building exercise they did. They did a little retreat or something like that as a crew. They took some photos. Nothing's wrong with that.
So there is something a little fishy about Captain Park, but I think unfortunately, yeah, it's one step forward and multiple steps back into a jail cell for Woo-sok because Junho can't necessarily bail him out at this point. I guess maybe that like other stooge that was with him that fell asleep at the wheel would be the one to do so, but I would not be surprised, Chappell, if this takes Woo-sok off the table in a manner of speaking for the rest of the season. And of course, it makes sense, right? Given like he has the most information about Captain Park, and now he is placed in a way where he can't get that information to Junho.
He can't get that information, but we do have a witness. Like you said, there's another stooge. He was driving the car, and so maybe he's the guy who gets the information back to Junho and makes Junho finally say, okay, let me look into this. I don't know if he's like calls and says, hey, they arrested him, and he had a pink jumpsuit and a bunch of money. You know, like I feel like if nothing else, it's a smoking gun. For the love of God, Junho, wake up. You know what I'm saying? So you get that phone call. At that point, you know. You can't trust Captain Park. Now, I don't know where he does after that. You know, I don't know what his next move is because Captain Park's his only real ally when it comes to the boating thing. So maybe he goes and finds a different boat. Maybe the drone people are helping him. Who knows?
Well, what might help is that we have two people also trying to leave the island by boat.
Yes.
So we actually might see a bit of a mixing of those stories as we move on to Noel, and this is something that I sort of forgot about, Chappell. Again, it's been a bit of a long 6 months between seasons, but yeah, we knew that everything was going on with the organ harvesting, but I forgot briefly that, like, Noel's boss had went all the way up to that level, you know, like, he's the guy in the black suit that sits her down in his office and is basically like, hey, you better be compliant and let this thing happen, or else it'll be your ass that's on the line. And so she decides to tie up that loose end where she threatens him at gunpoint, essentially saying, like, give me and I don't know, Soldier 16, no particular reason, a way to get off the island, and he will comply. But obviously, this guy who has better investigatorial skills than Junho is able to look into, like, there's something fishy going on. You know, this one number 16, he's bleeding, he's shambling around a lot. Clearly, something must have happened. And indeed, they find out that they just basically switched out the surgeon for 246. And so now I imagine Chappell next episode is going to focus on the fact that they will probably have their goals stopped by a bunch of pink suits closing in around them, preventing their escape, considering that now they know she's trying to leave with a player.
It felt like she had everything worked out and figured out, right? Like we swapped out the body. They're going to be looking for a body. Cool. We gave them a body. We gave them a green jumpsuit that, like, all these people are dead. No one can tell the story. All I need is for 16 to just be quiet until we can get to the perimeter and get to the boat. I'll take care of everything else. But the manager, her boss, says, you want to escape. Cool. Bet. That makes total sense. You want to escape with the surgeon who was harvesting the organs that you were staunchly against. You want to leave with that guy. You know him? She's like, that's not important. He's like, okay, but like, that's not weird to you that that's the guy. Like, of all the people, like, not the other people, the grunts that were bringing him the people, but the one who was actually cutting into these people. That's the guy, and he wants to leave with you. That we've talked. I know him, and he just wants to go with you. Okay, fine, it makes sense. It don't make sense to me, but okay. So he sends people to investigate, and of course, they find out that the bodies have been swapped, and now they know, but she doesn't know that they know. You know, yep. And so you're right. There are plenty of signs saying that, like, you should be paying attention to 16. Obviously, he's still bleeding, which is crazy because that man was shot, and so it's like, you know, the surgeon hooked him up a little bit, but I mean, he just got shot yesterday. It hasn't been that long.
But that just shows the disastrous sick leave policy that Inho institutes. It's like he didn't even get some time off. He had to go right back and work hours later.
Yeah, that's for the Squid Game spinoff when we start talking about these benefits or lack thereof. But yeah, the manager realizes very quickly that something's up, and so they're going to try to put a stop to this. Question is how, and how successful will they be, knowing that, like, they have the boat situation already hooked up. She has the key to the boat. Yep. They just have to keep her and him from getting to the boat, I guess, And they said it would be more difficult than it just, you just can't just walk out there and get on the boat. So that'd be tough. 16 does not know that they're on to him either. So there's some intrigue there for sure.
And also, again, like you said, they're being given directly the key. So does Noel know how to drive a boat? Does
Yeah.
46 know how to drive a boat?
Right. And it's like, I mean, I guess it's like, I guess I'll figure it out once I get to the boat. It's like, I'd rather be on the boat trying to figure it out than sitting here trying to figure out how to get to a boat, or, so that'll work. But I don't know. Is there any world where Junhi, well, no, sorry. Is there any world where Noel and Junho are like crossing ships in the night?
I think that very much could happen. I think it would make a lot of sense to finally have these two threads outside of the Squid Game connect. I would love it too if it's like, Junho finally makes his way to the island just in time to have Noel try to leave. And maybe like they're onto Noel, they're about to encroach upon her, and then it's like, holy shit, who's this guy in the scuba suit? Let's deal with him. And so Noel's able to make her escape. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's that, Junho lands on the island, is able to get what he wants, and makes his escape, and he happens to hop onto Noel's boat. I'm not entirely sure, but it just feels too convenient, right? That like we are mistrusting of a boat captain on one story, and the other story they have just been given a boat. It could be as simple as Noel and 246 do not make it off the island. Junho then happens to see a boat and commandeer it and use it to escape as well. We don't even need a direct meeting of these characters.
Yeah, but I definitely need Captain Park dealt with. Like I feel like we can't just leave that thread open. Like I don't think Junho can figure out what happened and then do this without him. Like I feel like he has to, like, I don't know if he just like holds him hostage and says like, hey, you take me to the island or I'll kill you, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But I think maybe he does see them like in the night, and like maybe they like, okay, we'll kick Captain Park off and then we'll put her on the boat with us. We'll take her to land. I feel like there's something, but yeah, I'd have to guess that they're going to meet in the water at some point.
All right, well, we will meet once again tomorrow, Chappell, to get into episode 4. We are at the halfway point, believe it or not, of Squid Game Season 3. We are at that break in the bridge, and so we will jump over the gap and see what lands on the other side. I imagine we'll pick up immediately from where we left off with this jump rope game to see, is this guy just going to spoil everybody's fun, number 96, and just keep progressively throwing everybody into the pit? What will happen with Junhi? Will Gi-hun make it back, or will MG Coin be the one to help her across? Will Minsu be able to do so? Will he take his Popeye-like spinach in the form of that last pill? And then again, we will see what's going on off the island, as well as on the outer perimeter, I should say, with Noel and 246 as the jig is up. But I thought this was such an incredibly impressive episode. Again, dealing with some very, very tragic stories, most of them coming to an end. It reminds you so much of when this show is good. It really forces you to care and rips your heart out. And it's one of these things, Chappell, where it's a terrible feeling, but you almost feel like elated at how terrible the feeling is, because it reminds you about how the characterization of someone like Gumja, or even the people that are left behind in Gi-hun and Junhi, are so good and have been built up over a season and a half, that when we are forced to see what this poor woman has to do and how things end for her, it just sticks with you for a while. And I do think the plight of Gumja in particular is going to stick with me for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think this season for me is already better than season 2. Not to say that season 2 was bad, but I do think that we're back at the things that really work, and we're pulling at the heartstrings. That Squid Game has hit those notes before, but it seems like we're back there, and we're back at some of the I guess more critical moments of the show, right? Like, because like season 2, it felt like a bridge with a gap in it. Like it's like, okay, there was a small gap, and now we're at season 3 where we know that there's only a few more episodes to go. So we're moving toward a finale. And so we have to tie up a lot of these loose ends. And it does feel like we're moving there. And on the way to the finale, we are definitely making us feel all the emotions too. So this has been so much fun to kind of revisit the Squid Game and to kind of feel those old feelings that we had, even if they are dark and also awful.
And especially because, look, not to say that Gi-hun couldn't have his moment to be in his feels, because, again, losing Jung-jae and having this big grand master plan of a coup come crashing down would be anything to send someone into, a semi-dead-eyed state. But, like, it's nice to see him semi-activated again.
Yeah.
It's nice to have him showcasing how damn good he is at these games, impressively crossing that bridge with a baby in his arms and with the intention to go back and do it again. Like, it's nice to have the character back in a manner of speaking, though I do think he is also not necessarily the Gi-hun that we left at the end of season 2. I think he certainly is going to carry forward a lot of the people that were lost. Obviously, the final words that Gumja imparted onto him, and especially something new to fight for him in the form of this, I would say with love, incredibly CGI baby, Chappell.
Oh yeah.
This makes Renesmee look realistic.
I'm so sick of this damn baby already. I'm sorry, dude. My notes are like, boy, somebody come get this baby. I cannot believe that we're not normalizing a baby in the Squid Game. But as you were saying, Gi-hun, his motivation is very different now. We saw the bright red, pink hair or whatever, and he was like, he's on a mission. It's a vengeance tour. He's gonna take it all down. But now I feel like we're back to his like season 1 version of himself, where it's like, I'm just trying to make it. I'm just trying to survive and be a good person while I do it. And if that means taking care of this baby, then that's what I'm going to do.
All right. Well, we will be back tomorrow seeing the results of the jump rope game, maybe getting a peek as to what the end game of Squid Game looks like. And we shall see if indeed those two streams will cross in a much larger body of water than a stream, the sea, with Junho and Newell. Thank you all so much for listening. As per usual, let us know your thoughts in the comments, as tomorrow we'll be back with episode 4. Until then, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.